The Second World War is often told through the lens of battles, strategies, and leaders. But behind every plan and offensive were thousands of ordinary German soldiers, young men pulled from villages, towns, and cities, thrown into a conflict far bigger than themselves. For many, the war began not with glory, but with fear. They left behind families, girlfriends, and quiet lives, stepping into a world of uncertainty. The uniform they wore was a symbol of duty, but also a constant reminder of the expectations placed upon them. Life in the barracks was monotonous yet harsh. Days began before sunrise, with endless drills and training exercises. Food was scarce, often cold, and repetitive. Soldiers learned to survive on meager rations, finding small comforts where they could: a letter from home, a shared cigarette, or a brief moment of humor among comrades. But behind the routines, anxiety was constant. Every march toward the front, every night in the trenches, carried the weight of danger. The fear of artillery, the uncertainty of the next battle, and the knowledge that survival was never guaranteed shaped the minds of these young men. For many ordinary German soldiers, the first experience of battle was overwhelming. The sounds of artillery, the screams of comrades, and the chaos of advancing and retreating units created a reality far harsher than any training could prepare them for. Letters from home often conflicted with the grim reality of the front. Mothers, fathers, and sweethearts wrote words of encouragement and hope, unaware of the horrors their sons would witness. Some soldiers kept these letters close, reading them during rare moments of calm, while others hid them, unable to reconcile the love at home with the fear around them. Camaraderie became a lifeline. Friends in the same unit shared everything from food to memories, from laughter to fear. Bonds formed quickly, often stronger than family ties. These connections were essential for survival, as they provided moments of humanity in an otherwise brutal existence. Yet, even amidst friendship, moral questions arose. Soldiers were not all ideologues. Many struggled with the orders they were given, the treatment of civilians, and the reality of a war they did not fully understand. Some followed blindly, some questioned quietly, and a few took risks to act according to their conscience, knowing the consequences could be deadly. Life on the front lines was a constant struggle against not only the enemy, but also the environment itself. Soldiers faced freezing winters in Russia, scorching heat in North Africa, and endless mud in the forests of Europe. Trenches and foxholes offered little comfort: cold, damp, and crawling with lice and insects. Sleep was scarce, often stolen in short bursts between patrols and skirmishes. Meals were minimal and monotonous. Soldiers learned to make what they had last longer, improvising with whatever could be scavenged or shared. Coffee was a luxury, bread and canned meat became staples. Yet even these simple routines, preparing a meal, sharing a smoke, offered a small sense of normalcy in a world turned upside down. In the rare moments of rest, soldiers wrote letters home, played cards, or shared stories of life before the war. They celebrated small victories and mourned losses, often side by side with comrades who had become like brothers. Humor, even dark humor, was a shield against despair, a way to survive mentally when the body endured endlessly. Despite the harshness, many soldiers held on to a sense of purpose. Some believed they were defending their country. Others simply aimed to survive and return home. Yet every day brought new challenges, unexpected ambushes, relentless artillery, disease, and the constant fear that any moment could be the last. The reality of combat tested soldiers like nothing else. Fear was constant. Every advance could be met with gunfire. Every quiet night could erupt into an ambush. Many soldiers spoke later of the shock of the first battle, the surreal combination of adrenaline, confusion, and terror. Some froze, unable to move under fire. Others acted instinctively, following training and the example of comrades. Decisions were often made in split seconds, with life and death hanging in the balance. Many soldiers witnessed the deaths of friends they had laughed with only hours before, and the psychological weight of these losses was enormous. Survival often depended not on skill, but on luck. Mines, snipers, artillery shells, and disease claimed countless lives. Regardless of courage or preparation, letters home rarely captured this reality. Families received news of injuries or death, but seldom the details of the fear, exhaustion, and moral uncertainty that soldiers endured daily. For some, the war hardened them. The relentless stress, loss, and witnessing of atrocities changed men forever. Others found moments of humanity even in chaos, sharing food with civilians, protecting prisoners, or comforting the wounded. These small acts of compassion were rare but unforgettable, providing a glimpse of humanity in the midst of widespread destruction. As the war dragged on, ordinary German soldiers faced exhaustion and disillusionment. The initial sense of duty or patriotism often gave way to fatigue, frustration, and despair. Many questioned why they were fighting, why they had lost friends, and whether survival was even worth the cost. Desertion, surrender, and capture became increasingly common. Some soldiers were lucky enough to be taken prisoner and survived the war. Others faced harsh treatment in POW camps. Those who returned home often did so to a country in ruins, with destroyed towns, displaced families, and a population struggling to rebuild. For the soldiers themselves, the end of the war brought a complex mix of relief, guilt, and trauma. Memories of fear, comrades lost, and acts committed haunted them for years. Many kept these experiences private, unable or unwilling to share the full reality of what they endured. Yet even amid the devastation, stories of resilience emerged. Former soldiers found ways to reconnect with family, rebuild lives, and carry forward lessons learned under unimaginable pressure. Their experiences, though often overlooked, reveal the human side of war that ordinary men caught in extraordinary circumstances, trying to survive and maintain their humanity. Not every story of ordinary German soldiers ended in tragedy or despair. Some found moments of unexpected humanity even in the midst of war. Soldiers helped civilians in occupied towns, shared food with those in need, or protected the wounded from further harm. These acts were small, often unnoticed, but they were a testament to the complexity of individuals caught in conflict. Many soldiers also formed lifelong bonds with their comrades. Men who had shared fear, hunger, and the burden of survival developed relationships that lasted decades. These friendships were built not on ideology, but on shared experience, the reality of facing death side by side, and relying on one another to endure. Despite the propaganda and strict military hierarchy, ordinary soldiers were not all uniform in thought or action. Some quietly resisted immoral orders, some risked punishment to save lives, and some found solace in letters, memories, or fleeting moments of peace. Their lives remind us that even within a brutal war machine, there were individuals navigating their own moral paths. The psychological toll on ordinary German soldiers was immense. Fear became a constant companion, shaping every decision and action. The uncertainty of survival, the stress of combat, and the weight of moral responsibility left deep marks on their minds. Many soldiers experienced what we now recognize as post-traumatic stress. Long before the term existed, sleep became rare and fragmented. Nights were filled with the sounds of distant artillery, the cries of the wounded, and the haunting memories of friends lost. Some soldiers turned to small routines, writing in notebooks, humming songs from home, or quietly observing the world around them to maintain a sense of stability amidst chaos. The conflict also forced soldiers to confront their own beliefs. Propaganda and duty often clashed with personal morality. Witnessing atrocities or being ordered to participate in them created profound internal conflict. Some adapted, suppressing their conscience to survive. Others quietly resisted in whatever ways they could, protecting civilians, hiding weapons, or refusing to carry out certain orders. These internal struggles were often invisible to the outside world. Families received letters filled with generalities and reassurances, unaware of the mental and emotional battles their sons faced daily. Many soldiers returned home carrying these burdens in silence, shaping their post-war lives in ways few could understand. Even in the darkest times, ordinary German soldiers found moments of humanity and brief reprieves from the horrors around them. A shared joke, a simple meal, or a song sung quietly in the barracks could lift spirits, if only for a few minutes. These fleeting moments reminded them of life beyond the battlefield. Sometimes, soldiers would exchange gifts with locals: apples, bread, or handmade items, small gestures that carried immense meaning in a world of scarcity and fear. They wrote letters home, describing mundane details or humorous anecdotes, trying to preserve a sense of normalcy amidst chaos. Sports and games were another escape. Soccer matches, card games, and competitions among comrades offered distraction and relief, a reminder that life continued even in wartime. Music and singing, whether around a fire or quietly in the barracks, connected soldiers to memories of home and family. These small moments of humanity did more than entertain, they were survival tools. By maintaining bonds with comrades and connecting, however briefly, to a world beyond the front, soldiers could endure the relentless stress and uncertainty of war. Even the smallest gestures of kindness or levity became lifelines in a world dominated by fear and destruction. Long marches and constant movement were a defining part of life for ordinary German soldiers. They traversed miles of mud, snow, and rubble, often carrying heavy packs and weapons. Exhaustion was constant, but there was little choice. The front never waited, and orders demanded relentless progress. The landscape itself became an enemy. Soldiers trudged through freezing winters in Russia, struggled across desert sands in North Africa, and navigated dense forests in Europe. Rain turned roads into quagmires, and snow covered tracks and supplies, making survival even more difficult. Blisters, frostbite, and exhaustion were everyday companions. During these movements, danger was ever present. Ambushes, sniper fire, and artillery strikes could happen at any moment. The unpredictability of the terrain and the enemy's strategy kept soldiers in a constant state of alertness. Even small errors, a misstep or a wrong turn, could be fatal. Yet soldiers learned to adapt. They shared knowledge about terrain, weather, and survival tactics. They improvised shelters, scavenged for extra food, and relied on each other's experience to survive the relentless march. Each day was a test of endurance, resilience, and mental fortitude, forging bonds that would last a lifetime. Interaction with civilians was one of the most complex and morally challenging aspects of a soldier's life. Ordinary German soldiers often found themselves in towns and villages torn apart by war, witnessing the suffering of those caught in the conflict. Some soldiers treated civilians with kindness, offering food or medical aid when possible. Others followed strict orders that required harsh measures, leaving them torn between duty and conscience. The lines between right and wrong blurred, creating moments of deep inner conflict. Children were especially poignant reminders of the humanity around them. Soldiers sometimes risked punishment to protect or comfort them, sharing rations or offering small gestures of reassurance. These moments, though brief, left lasting impressions on both the soldiers and the civilians they encountered. Despite the propaganda and rigid military rules, many soldiers quietly resisted cruelty when they could. They hid valuables, provided extra food, or protected civilians from harm. Such acts were rarely recorded, yet they reveal the human side of individuals often seen only as part of an enemy force. Injuries and illness were constant threats for ordinary German soldiers. The battlefield was unforgiving, and even minor wounds could become life-threatening without proper care. Infections, frostbite, and malnutrition claimed countless lives alongside enemy fire. Field hospitals were often overcrowded and under-resourced. Medics worked tirelessly, sometimes under fire, to treat the wounded. Soldiers learned to improvise bandages, clean wounds, and care for each other with whatever supplies were available. Compassion and skill were as vital as courage. The fear of injury extended beyond the physical. Soldiers worried about being separated from their units, left behind, or falling into enemy hands while wounded. These anxieties weighed heavily adding a layer of mental strain to the already brutal conditions of war. Despite the danger, soldiers relied on each other. Comrades would carry the wounded to safety, share scarce medicine, or keep morale high with small gestures of encouragement. Survival often depended not only on skill, but also on solidarity, and the willingness to care for one another in the harshest circumstances. Amidst the constant hardships, ordinary German soldiers sometimes found rare moments of joy and normalcy. Letters from home were treasured above all else. News of births, celebrations, or simple greetings reminded soldiers of the world beyond the front lines. Occasionally, soldiers were granted short leaves or moments of respite behind the lines. These brief breaks offered a chance to wash, rest, and share a meal properly. Even simple activities like writing, reading, or playing cards became precious escapes from the unrelenting stress of combat. Holidays, when they coincided with the war, were celebrated quietly. Soldiers improvised small gatherings, exchanged gifts, and shared songs from home. These fleeting occasions brought laughter and camaraderie, however temporary, and helped preserve morale. Even small acts, offering a piece of chocolate, helping a comrade with chores, or telling a joke were vital. They created bonds, offered emotional relief, and reminded soldiers that life, in some form, continued despite the horrors around them. Even ordinary soldiers found moments of extraordinary courage. Small acts of bravery were often unnoticed by the world, but they mattered deeply to those involved. Some risked their lives to save wounded comrades under fire. Others protected civilians caught in the crossfire. These acts were not always about heroism in battle, but about maintaining humanity in the midst of chaos. Soldiers would defy orders in small ways to spare lives, hide valuables from looting, or share scarce food with those in need. Fear did not disappear, but these moments gave soldiers a sense of agency. They could make choices, even small ones, that reflected their conscience and moral compass. Such decisions were rarely recognized in official records, yet they revealed the complexity of individuals within the machinery of war. Through these acts, soldiers demonstrated that, even in one of history's deadliest conflicts, human compassion could survive. They remind us that war is not only defined by strategy and battles, but by the choices of ordinary people navigating extraordinary circumstances. The end of the war brought relief, but also new challenges for ordinary German soldiers. Returning home was not the same as leaving. The front towns and cities lay in ruins. Families were displaced, and the country itself was shattered. Many soldiers struggled to reintegrate into civilian life. Memories of battles, lost friends, and moral compromises followed them. Some carried guilt for actions taken or orders followed, while others mourned comrades who would never return. The psychological scars were deep, shaping their post-war lives in ways that could not easily be healed. Rebuilding lives required resilience. Former soldiers sought work, reunited with family, and tried to reclaim a sense of normalcy. Friendships forged in the chaos of war often became lifelines, providing support and understanding that others could not. Despite the devastation these men endured, their experiences reflect not only the horrors of war, but also the capacity for adaptation and survival. They were ordinary people facing extraordinary circumstances, navigating fear, responsibility, and morality, and carrying their stories into the future. The stories of ordinary German soldiers offer a perspective often overlooked in history books. They were not leaders or strategists, but individuals caught in a conflict beyond their control, making daily decisions that could mean life or death. Their experiences teach us about the human cost of war, the fear, fatigue, and moral dilemmas that shape ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances. By examining their lives, we gain insight into the complexity of war, beyond the statistics and battles. Some soldiers never spoke of their experiences, carrying memories silently for decades. Others recorded their thoughts in diaries or letters, providing historians and families with glimpses into the human side of the conflict. These personal accounts reveal courage, compassion, fear, and resilience, qualities that transcend nationality and ideology. Remembering these stories allows us to understand that war is not only defined by grand strategies, but by the lives of individuals. Ordinary soldiers, often forgotten, played a role in shaping history, and their humanity reminds us that even in times of immense destruction, the human spirit can endure. As we look back on the lives of ordinary German soldiers, it becomes clear that history is not just about victories or defeats, but about human experience. These men, poured from ordinary lives, faced extraordinary circumstances that tested every part of their being. Some did terrible things, some did remarkable acts of kindness. Many simply struggled to survive, to maintain their dignity, and to protect those they could. Their stories are not always heroic in the traditional sense, but they are deeply human. In remembering them, we remember the complexity of war, the mixture of fear, courage, morality, and survival. These ordinary soldiers, often forgotten in grand narratives, reveal that war is experienced not only in strategies and battles, but in the hearts, choices, and resilience of individuals. Their lives remind us that even in the darkest times, humanity can endure, and by sharing their stories, we honor not only their struggles, but the lessons they leave for all of us, about compassion, resilience, and the strength of the human spirit.